All right, well, thank you for joining us today. I just got back from vacation. Got to spend a week out in the Black Hills, South Dakota with my family, 6 adults, 2 babies, 1 child, and my motorcycle. So we'd spend a lot of time as a family. About 3 o'clock, head back to the cabin. Kids would go down, and Grandpa would jump on his motorcycle. Got to drive about 750 miles up the hills on my motorcycle last week. So great time. Got to run Spearfish Canyon 11 times, which is always a highlight for me. Thank you for joining us. In the next couple of weeks, there are going to be some changes to our online platform. So we will be sending this out in an email, and we'll also be doing a video chat about this just to be sure. But I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what is going to happen. It shouldn't change much for most of you, but for some of you, it will. We are going to be using a software program or an app called Vimeo. Here's what it looks like. This is actually the Vimeo logo, so you know what you're looking for. And here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to this platform for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that we're going to it is it's going to offer us a lot more options than what we currently have. So one of the things that's going to happen is, in the past month or so, what we've been doing is we have been putting our online content, actually it's been available at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. So if you're used to watching before 10:30, this change will affect you, otherwise it won't. What's going to happen is our target is August 9th. And on August 9th, what we intend to do is we intend to go to our live service and actually start broadcasting that. So what will happen is at 10:30, our service will be streamed live. And then after that, it'll be archived so you can watch it anytime. What's going to happen is we're using that program called Vimeo for a number of reasons. It gives us a lot more platforms to be able to have people watch our message. So first of all, YouTube and Facebook, one of the problems we run into is copyright issues and ad issues. So Vimeo kind of bypasses some of that stuff. So what's going to happen is these will be your options to watch us live starting on August 9th. First of all, you can go to our church website, hollyspringsbible.com. You'll see a tab called Video Sermons. You can click on that, and at 10:30, it will show up on our church website. If you're used to watching on YouTube or Facebook, at 10:30, it will go live on YouTube and Facebook as well, so you can continue to watch on those platforms. For some of you, you have smart TVs, so and you use programs like Roku or maybe an Amazon Fire Stick. Roku and Amazon have a Vimeo app, and you can add that to your Roku list or to your Fire Stick list. And what that will do then is allow you to watch our services on that platform as well. For those of you who have mobile phones or tablets, iPads, iPhones, those kinds of things, you can download the Vimeo app as well, and you would be able to watch on that as well. So what it's going to do is it's going to give us a number of platforms to make it a little bit easier for people online. The other thing, the only downside to it is we won't be able to do our podcast early. So our podcast will be put on Sunday evening. But other than that, what we're going to try to do is get it out of as many platforms, and Vimeo allows us to do that in one shot. So we intend to start, basically we'll cut into our service at 10:30. We start at 10 o'clock, so wherever we are at 10:30, you'll just join our service. And we'll have at least the preaching part of the service for you. I might be able to get some of the music in there as well. But that's where we're headed with our online deal. So we're testing it actually this Sunday and next Sunday. And then we intend, no complications, we intend to go live with it on August 9th. We'd love to have you join us. We are meeting at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. And we basically are asking you to kind of self-evaluate yourself. If you're running a fever, not feeling well, we're asking you to watch online. If you have had a temperature of 100.4 or higher in the last 14 days, we're asking you to watch online. If you've had prolonged exposure to somebody who has tested positive, we're asking you to watch online. And then finally, if you have some health or maybe age-related issues, we're asking that you watch online until you feel comfortable coming. One of the things that I am observing right now is that I've seen a lot of people protect themselves physically. And they're taking all the precautions and doing all the right things. But what I'm starting to see is they haven't addressed the emotional side of it. And so I would encourage you, if you're one of those that you've just been isolated and everything else for a long period of time here, I'd encourage you at least get outside your house, at least walk around. Many of you, like me, you live on a farm and acreage, and get out in the garden or just get outside for a little bit to get some fresh air. But take care of yourself emotionally as well. If you're not on our email list, please get on our email list, particularly in the next 2 weeks as we start to really spell out all of the ways that you can watch online. So let's look to the Lord in prayer, and we will get started today. So, Lord, thank you for the day, for the time, for the opportunity. Lord, our country is in a very difficult position, Lord, all the way across the board. And we ask that you would heal physically. We ask that you would heal our nation spiritually. We ask that you guide our leaders, you'd guide people who are making decisions, for those that are struggling emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, that, Lord, you would guide and watch over them as well. That, Lord, you'd work in their lives and hearts as only you can. And for us today, Lord, that you would encourage our hearts, that we would take your word, that we would hear it, that we would apply it, that we would work it into our lives, and that this week, Lord, we would live differently because of what you have done in our lives. These things we ask in your name. Amen. We are in the book of Exodus. We're walking through Moses and the children of Israel. Israel has left Egypt. They've been traveling for a while now. They've gotten to Sinai. At Sinai now, they're going to spend about a year there. They're going to receive the 10 Commandments. They're going to build the tabernacle. They're going to spend a lot of time doing that. We're at the first part of that year where the children of Israel God is giving the 10 Commandments to Moses, who's going to give them the children of Israel. The Jewish people know the 10 Commandments is the 10 words. And so what I have done is we've kind of taken one word, one English word to associate with each commandment as kind of an overall principle of things that we need to incorporate in our own lives to live life as God intended it to be. The first word that we used was authority, and the idea that the commandment says, I am the Lord your God. The idea is that you and I have to choose who's going to be the authority in our life. The second word was priority. God said, you'll have no other gods before me. The idea is you're going to have to place God at the center. God's going to have to be the thing on which all of your life revolves around. We talked about the third commandment, which is the idea of you'll not take the Lord's name in vain. The idea of giving God priority or giving God's reputation and holding it in high esteem. We're going to talk a little bit about that as it's tied to the fifth commandment. And then last time we talked about the Sabbath, the idea of remembering the Sabbath. And the idea is that God has established us to have a rhythm, a pattern of life. And part of that pattern involves this idea of rest, this idea of refocus, this idea of taking the time to be able to keep God really at the center of our lives and allowing our bodies and our souls and our minds the rest that we need to recharge for the coming week. So we've talked about those kinds of ideas. So this morning, we make a pivot, actually. The first 4 commandments deal with God. The last 6 commandments deal relationship to man or earthly kind of relationship. And so let's take a look at the 5th commandment. It has to do with our parents. And here's what it says. Honor your father and your mother, so that you will live a long time in the land that the Lord your God is going to give you. One of the things that's unique about, first of all, there's a lot of things that are very, very unique about this commandment. One of the things that's unique about them is this is the only commandment in which a human relationship is actually mentioned. And a human relationship is father and mother. Most people see this as a pivotal command because what they do is they understand that when they ask Christ, what's the greatest commandment? He said, you'll love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. The second is likened to it, you'll love your neighbor as yourself. So one of the things that people see is this is the pivotal command to those principles, is the idea that the first 4 deal with God, The middle one deals with your family, your mom and your dad. And then the next 5 deal with human beings, with people. And he's talking about this concept, this idea, if you will, that it pivots off of that. This is the only commandment that has a reward mentioned with it. And it really talks about the way that you interact or the attitude that you have towards your parents, because believe it or not, that impacts all of the relationships that you're going to have all the way down the line. So let's talk a little bit about the different words and different ideas, and then we'll put it all together. The idea of honor, first of all, in Scripture is spoken of often. The idea is to honor something is something that's costly, valuable, priceless. In the Bible, we're talking about they were to honor the priest's garments, they were to honor the tabernacle, they were to honor God, they were to honor our leaders, we're to honor our bosses, we're to honor our spouses, we're to honor one another. The Hebrew word actually is a word called kabod, and what it means is glory. It's the idea of something that is kind of overwhelming to you in your life. I like the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible. Here's how it translates Exodus 20. You shall value or treasure your father or your mother. So the Septuagint says, look, you need to treasure or value them. Listen to how Webster defines it. Webster defines honor as esteem, respect, a symbol of recognition or distinction, marked by integrity. So Webster looks at this as, in this idea of putting it, so to speak, up there on a pedestal, if you will. Let me give you a little bit of background as far as Jewish families go, because this really lays out some understanding for this. In a Jewish family, a parent, a mother or a father is really highly, highly, highly esteemed. Children were to honor their parents. Parents were to act honorably towards their children. And when a parent died in the Jewish world, this was a big deal. In the Jewish world, first of all, you took off work for a week. So you had 7 days of mourning. Then they had a mourner's prayer that they would recite actually every day for the next 11 months. On the anniversary of their death, they would light the menorah. In a Jewish world, they believed that a parent was so valuable and so highly esteemed that they could never be replaced. So the loss of a parent in a Jewish world was a really, really big, big, big deal. God often talks about the way, in Proverbs, about the way that we should honor and put our parents in high esteem. So we have this idea of the Jewish world of family, we have this idea of honor. So let's just talk about how it is we honor something or someone. Every day, you and I make choices on what we honor. We make choices on what we're going to put at the most important thing, for instance, for that day. It's an attitude. It's a response that we have. How we value things, how we treat things, how we show respect, if you will, to that. We saw this, by the way, in the idea of God when using God's name. You hold God's name in such high honor that you do nothing that would hurt his reputation. That's kind of the idea. We've already seen it with God. Now we see it with regards to our parent. So when we honor something, what do? First of all, we treat it differently. Things that have a high value in our life, we treat differently. We talk about them differently. We think about them differently. And when we talk about honoring something, that's what we're talking about. We put our parents in that position where we think about them differently, we talk about them differently, we treat them differently than we do other people. Why? Because we're putting them in high esteem. Here's a principle that I think is so essential that we grab a hold of this morning in our application of this. And it goes something like this. You get what you honor. That's a principle that's true in your family. It's a principle that's going to be true in your business. It's a principle that's going to be true in your life. You tell me what you're honoring, and I'll tell you what you're probably going to produce. You tell me what your company focuses on, and I'll tell you what you're probably going to produce. If your company focuses on the idea of profit, I can tell you how you're probably going to treat the people who work for you. If your company, on the other hand, focuses on people instead of profit, you want profit, but people are more important. I can tell you how you handle it. What you honor determines really what you're going to get. And that is such an important principle for us to understand on this idea of honoring our parents, of this idea of honoring our spouses, of this idea of honoring one another. So it's a life principle. So let's talk about in specific relationship to our parent. And by the way, when I talk about parents, for those of you who are married, I'm talking about in-laws as well, because they're part of the parent idea. I believe that if you have a poor relationship with your parent, that it greatly impacts every relationship you have. I believe this in psychology, we call it family of origin. This family of origin issue is so essential to you understanding not only how you're treating other people, but how you're going to treat your spouse, how you're going to treat your kids, how you're going to raise your family. So I see this as a pivotal thing. Now, here's where I got to step back just for a second. Because I understand that for someone like me to say honoring your parents is easy. I had a great example of Christian, godly parents growing up. So I was incredibly fortunate. So I understand it's easy for me. My parents were honorable people, so it was easy to show them honor. But I understand that there are a lot of people in this world that do not have that kind of home environment. There are some of you that your parents have abused you physically, or verbally, or in some cases sexually, or they abused alcohol, or there were anger issues, there were irresponsibility where they didn't care about you and they just left you to your own. And so when I talk about this idea of honor, it's very, very hard for you to go, look, it's very hard for me to honor that person. And what I would say to you, is you're going to have to work through this spiritually. One of the things that helps me and when I deal with issues like this is a difference between honoring a position and honoring a person. I can honor the position of this person was my father or this person was my mother, even though they may not have been an honorable person. Because this is so essential that you work through this, that you process some of these things and the way that you look at them, the way that you respond to them. And in some cases, I realize in some cases they're gone. They can't make amends, you can't make amends. But it's something that I think it's so essential to you being healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all across the board. You have to remember this. Honor is not a way that our world works today. You're watching this play out. We have a whole community, a whole generation, if you will, of people who know nothing of honor. When I grew up, honor was something taught. You were taught to honor teachers. You were taught to honor coaches. You were taught to honor policemen. You were taught to honor your leaders, politicians. We're in a culture now where honor's really been thrown out the window. If we think somebody was wrong in the way they handled something, then we believe that I don't have to show them honor. And what I would say is this is such an essential element of our culture. A lot of what you're seeing happen right now, you're watching protests and you're watching statues and you're watching things just be destroyed because they have no respect, they have no honor for it. And it's because we raised a whole group of people who have been raised without this principle of honor. And it is so important that we get this right as both in the way that we respond and the way we act. So what I would say, first of all, to those of you who are parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, you need to be honorable people. You need to be doing the things that honorable people do. And you need to earn, if you will, their respect by the way that you act. If you're disrespectful for them, to people, it's really going to be hard for people to show you respect. I don't believe it's an excuse to not show respect. I'll get to that in a second. But it just makes it much harder. So the first thing I would challenge is this idea of be honorable people, first of all. Secondly, if you're a parent, you need to model and you need to expect honor from your kids. This is essential. This is absolutely essential. That, you know, my kids growing up, my boys will tell you, I don't think they ever heard me say, you will not talk to your mother that way. But I demanded, and I mean demanded, that they respect my wife, that they show her honor, because that was just fundamental. You will not talk about my wife that way. Why? Because as Scripture says, I want to honor my spouse. I want to put my wife up there, and I don't want anyone to say or do anything that would be disrespectful towards her. So starting in my home, I just said, you will not talk to my wife that way. I just demanded it. And I think you demand it all the way across the board. Again, we're in a culture which hasn't taught this. And so let me talk to different groups and different scenarios just to make it really practical for you, okay? First of all, let me talk to those of you who are divorced. And you have an ex or maybe two exes or whatever else. Listen to me, and listen to me well. I've spent 35 years watching this play out in the real world. You must never talk disrespectfully about your ex, period. Let me say it again. You do not need to talk disrespectfully ever about your ex. Because here's why. As your kids listen to that, as your kids hear that, you are cutting your own feet out from underneath you. Because kids don't make that distinction. And so kids see authority as a whole. And when you destroy one authority, you destroy all authority. And if you're talking about how your ex is blankety blank and this and that and that and that and that and that, and that, then what happens is, and this is what will play out, as your kids get older and as your kids start to understand the dynamics of human relationship, you will become the one they turn on. I have seen this over and over and over again. When couples get divorced, I explain to them, look, this is so important. You do not tear down the other parent because it is still their parent. And the minute you start to tear them down, you start to hurt your own authority in that kid's life. Because eventually if that kid goes, well, if I don't have to listen to them because they're not honorable, then I don't think my mom or my dad's honorable in this situation, so I'm not going to listen to them. And that's how kids, teenagers, even adults process it. And it's important for you to understand this. So what I would say is one of the things you need to change, if you've gotten in this habit, you've got to change it. Honor your father and mother. So you have to present an honorable approach to the ex. And if you go, well, I can't say anything good about them, fine, then don't say anything. But whatever you do, don't tear them down, especially in front of your children, because you will pay for this down the line. I'm watching kids use their kids as pawns, if you will, with grandparents. And as those kids start to get older and they start to realize everything that dad or that mom robbed them of, all of a sudden I've watched them turn on them and develop a relationship with those grandparents in spite of what the other kid did. So be really, really careful here. I think you need to, across the board, teach this idea of honor the position. Even though see, this is what our society doesn't get. Our society says, I will honor you if you honor me. I will respect you if you respect me. That's not a biblical position. A biblical position is you respect the position that God says to respect, regardless of whether or not that person was respectful or honorable or dishonorable or anything else. And this is so important. So let me give you a practical illustration, okay? I believe you should respect police officers, okay? I have always been respectful of police officers. Even when I have been given a speeding ticket, I thank the officer at the end of it for doing their job. That's why, because I honor the position, okay? Let's say I get pulled over and this officer's had a horrible day. And he comes up to me and he says, who in the world do you think you are? Blankety, blank, 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 blank. I need your driver's license and I'm going to throw it. And he is just absolutely horrible to me. Absolutely horrible. What I do is I treat him respectfully and I treat him honorably. And at the end, I'm even going to thank him for doing his job. Now, I may afterwards file a complaint, but even then, I'm going to go within the system. Why? Because there's a position of honor that comes with the position that you have. This is what's wrong with our country. This is what's happening right now in our country. Listen, I don't care who the president is. I don't care if he's Republican, Democrat, or Martian. The bottom line is this. He is the president. And that position should always be spoken of honorably. But when you have a whole society that trashes, even in evangelical Christianity, that trashes different leaders and does not treat them in an honorable way or speak of them honorably, then what happens is you now create a whole culture of people who do not show honor. So the issue is, why are we seeing what we're seeing right now in our culture? We're just reaping what we've sown. We're reaping a whole culture of parents who are screaming at referees and umpires and treating them disrespectfully. We're reaping a generation who has gone in and treated teachers disrespectfully and told teachers off because their kid got a bad grade or their kid they think was treated unfairly. We're reaping a whole generation of people who parents would come in and yell at coaches, or they would watch parents get irate about this or that and this mistreatment and that mistreatment. And we're watching a whole culture of people who have not treated people honorably, and we're wondering, why are we seeing what we're seeing? We're reaping what we've sown. That's what's happening. And I can't necessarily change the world, but I can change our community. And I can look at it and say, you know what? The one thing my children are going to see, the one thing my grandchildren are going to see, they're going to see a person who shows honor and respect to, first and foremost, my parents, and then secondly to anyone who's in authority over me. Why? Because that's what God tells me to do. And when I talk about somebody else, I want my kids to see it as I talk about it honorably. And this is so important that we get this. And here's what I would say to you. You're going to produce what you honor. You're going to produce what you put and you look at, talk about, think about, act about differently. My wife and I realized this a number of years ago. I had a mentor help me understand. Listen, life is short. Make memories while you can. People, experiences are more valuable than things. And so my wife and I, a number of years ago, as our kids, actually they were college age, late high school, college age. We sat down and said, you know what, we're going to start doing family vacations every year. We're going to start making memories. So we started going out to the Black Hills. And at the beginning I said, you know what, we're going to take a week. We're going to go out to Black Hills. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to rent a really nice cabin. We're going to have a really great time. And we started doing this. And then as the boys started dating and getting engaged and stuff like that, so then the girls started joining us. And then this past year we had everybody join us. Because what happened was my wife and I sat down and said, you know what, this is going to be what we honor. This is what we're going to put really as one of the top priorities in our life, is every year we're going to make this vacation. In spite of all this COVID thing and everything that's going on, this vacation was booked back in December, is when we booked this thing. And we followed all along to make sure stuff wasn't going to be closed and all of that. And so we took it. And so what happens is we go together as a family and we divide up the cost of the cabin. Everybody pitches in and pays their part. And we go in and we have this event. And for an entire week, we just focus on our family. We just focus on making memories. We just focus on getting to know each other and connecting and getting to spend time together. Everybody gets to do a little bit of their own thing, and we all get to relax a little bit, and we get to connect a little bit. Why? Because I want my kids, one day when I'm long gone, I want my kids to look back on the memories and the things that we created. Why? Because they know that my wife and I value this. We put it as a place of honor, and we have a great time doing it. And I want to challenge you with this idea, because this idea of honor, you get what you honor. And people go, I don't understand, I kind of envy the idea you're so close to your kids and stuff like that. You need to understand that's come as a result of a lot of effort and a lot of focus and a lot of saying, we're going to put family up here and we're going to make family a priority here. And that is so important for you to understand. You get what you honor. And if you're wise, you will stop and ask yourself, what are you honoring? Are you honoring that work, that job, that career? Are you honoring this whole this sports thing? Are you honoring the whole, theater or music or band or whatever it is your kids are involved in? Are you honoring the idea of family? Are you honoring the idea of church? We all come together every week to worship. What are you honoring? Because you tell me what that is, and I'll tell you what you're going to probably produce. There are exceptions, but kind of the rule thing is, you tell me whether or not you honor your parents, and I will tell you whether or not your kids, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, honor you. Why? You get what you honor. And a pivotal point in the Ten Commandments, before God shifts to the way we treat one another, he starts with this idea of parents. And he says, look, if you want it to go well with you when you get into this land, you better make sure you've got a relationship or an honorable, that you see your parents in an honorable way. They weren't perfect. They made plenty of mistakes. They would do it a whole lot differently today if they had the chance. But I want to challenge you with this idea to honor your father and mother, because it is so essential. So this morning, I end with this idea. Honoring your parents is the start of having a healthy relationship with others. You get what you honor. And showing honor to those who raised us is essential to life as God intended it to be. Let's pray. Lord, help us. Lord, the parents that you gave us, none of us had perfect parents. But Lord, you are the one who put us in the families that we were raised in. So Lord, I ask that you would help us to learn this principle. For those of us that were fortunate enough to have great examples, Lord, may we model it, may we continue the cycle of trying to be the kind of parents that are honorable, that love you, that keep you at the center of everything. Lord, for those of us, those who didn't, Lord, it's a real struggle. A message like this is really hard because there are some deep scars. Lord, would you help them to start to work and process through it so that, Lord, they do not carry on the anger and the bitterness and the resentment. And Lord, for those who need to change some things, help them to change some things. For those of us that need to enhance and encourage and strengthen some things, may we do that as well. And when it is all said and done, Lord, may you guide, direct, and use us this week. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Well, Lord bless you. We will see you, Lord willing, online next week. And if we can help, or if you just want to touch base and let us know how you're doing, we'd love to hear from you. So, Lord bless you. Have a great week.